Hello, everyone. Welcome to another Mysterious Galaxy virtual event. Tonight, we have a very fun event because we have two very fun authors. First off, we have the lady of the hour, whose book just released this week, Ayana Gray, with Beasts of Ruin. Hi, Ayana.
Hello!
For those of you who may not know, Ayana is a New York Times best-selling young adult fantasy author and lover of all things monster, mythos, and magic. Her debut novel, Beasts of Prey, is actually being adapted for feature film. Congratulations.
Thank you.
In conversation with Ayana tonight is Holly Black. Hi, Holly. We've been fortunate to host Holly in the past before, the Panini times. For those of you who don't know, Holly is the #1 New York Times bestselling author of fantasy novels, including the novels of Elfhame, The Coldest Girl in COLDTOWN, The Spiderwick Chronicles, and her adult debut, Book of Night. For those of you who haven't yet gotten your own copy of Beasts of Ruin, we are actually fortunate enough and have gotten some signed copies. That's why there's a cool sign sticker right there on that cover. You're going to see that. So either you can pop in the store, order by clicking the link below that says get a signed copy of Beasts of Ruin while supplies last, or give us a call over the phone, and we can definitely do that. For in-store pickup, or we ship. Not only that, but our website will also have links to Holly Black's books. If you haven't purchased any of her wonderful books, you can do that now. What are you waiting for? Lastly, before I leave it for these two wonderful authors to talk, if you notice, there's also another link below that says Ask a Question. Halfway through the program, we will open it to audience questions. If you have anything you would like to ask Ayana, please submit them there, and it will be gotten to later on. All right. I swear I've gotten everything out of my system. I will leave it to you, Ayana and Holly, but I'll see you all at the end.
Bye, Nick.
Bye.
Hi, Holly.
Hi. So first of all, congratulations on the release of Beasts of Ruin. This is so exciting.
Thank you. I can't believe it. It's been like 10 months since Beasts of Prey, so it's been quick.
So in case somebody has just stumbled in here, they don't know why they're here, they don't know where they are, can you tell us a little bit about the trilogy that started with Beasts of Prey?
Yes, so Beasts of Prey is a trilogy. It's a YA fantasy trilogy, and I also say it's a Pan-African trilogy because it draws from inspiration across the African continent. It is the story of two Black teens named Kofi and Ekon. Kofi is a beastkeeper at a magical zoo full of dangerous creatures, and Ekon is a warrior in training who descends from a long line of warriors. Totally different walks of life, but one night, through a series of unexpected events, their paths cross, and they end up going together into this magical jungle to try to hunt down a monster called the Shitani, who's been menacing their city for nearly 100 years. And of course, because this is YA fantasy, as soon as they step into said magical jungle, nothing goes according to plan. The plan completely fails, adventures unfold, and secrets are revealed. And so that's Beasts of Prey. And Beasts of Ruin, the second book in the trilogy, is really the continuation of their adventure and the story of them dealing with some of the consequences of what they learned in book one. So those are my books.
So one of the things I really loved is the world building. I love the way it felt familiar and strange because you were combining Pan-African folklore with pure fantasy. And I read in your author's note in Beasts of Prey that some decisions you made, like using real world words versus a conlang, were ones that came out of a desire to see sort of specific kinds of representation. And I think I saw that you said your work starts from your world building. So I wondered if you would be willing to just talk a little bit about your approach and how you put it all together.
First of all, thank you, because you're like the queen of world building. So that's like high praise. Thank you.
Secondary fantasy is very intimidating to me. There's a lot of names. There's a lot of history.
I like, not to like totally derail. I'm prone to derailing, but like I read The Cruel Prince earlier this year and learned so much. It was so like both disturbed and fascinated. So that's high praise from you. Thank you. I do like to start with world. I think some people start with characters and some people start with plot, but for me, I have to know the world, because then I know certain stories can exist within a certain world, and then certain characters can exist within a certain kind of story. And if I change the world, it would literally change everything about the characters in the story. So I start big and like to synthesize down. And And growing up, I didn't know, I loved Greco-Roman mythology because that was the only mythology I was exposed to. And I still love Greco-Roman mythology, but when I found out that there were mythologies from around the world and mythologies with people who looked like me, it was kind of like a kid in a candy store. I was really excited to play around with some of the real mythologies across the continent and also add my own twists because I love fantasy. So it's you write what you like to read, I think. So yeah, it's very, very natural. And yeah.
So did you always know there would be a map? And where in the process did you get the map?
Ooh, I drew lots of maps. I like to draw, actually. How good I am is debatable, but I like drawing. It's really freeing, and it's as a kid, like it was one of my escapes. I liked drawing before I liked writing. So there were maps for sure, and it helped me figure out, like, in world building, Beast of Prey takes place in the Zamani region in the east. That has a specific world and affects the story. And then in Beast of Ruin, they go south into kind of these marshlands. And because they're in the marshlands area, that changes the story. So it helped me. We didn't, the maps that are in Beast of Prey and Beast of Ruin were designed by a brilliant artist named Virginia Allen. She has done maps from so many great books. And I really just sent her a really awful sketch, and then she took it and made it like 1,000 times better. So she's actually done 4. I think she's done 4 maps at this point, or no, 3 maps. She's done Ashoza, the continent. In Beasts of Prey, she did the Greater Jungle, and in Beasts of Ruin, she does a place called Thornkeep.
So relatedly to world building is magic. And I love the splendor, and it's such a good name. Like, it feels really different. I was really engaged with figuring out how the magic worked along with the characters. And so I'm curious, especially because you did talk about coming into the world building early, where does magic fit into that? And how do you create a magic system?
Ooh, I think I pick up little pieces along the way. Like, it starts in the beginning, and then as I get to know the story, as I get to know the characters, I change things and kind of figure out what magic system would work within a world, within a certain story, within certain characters. And a lot of what I write is wish fulfillment, writing things that I wish I had had when I was 15 or 16 or 17. And one of the things that I had to learn, personally, was this idea of emotional intelligence, this idea of finding the validity and knowing the importance of acknowledging your emotions. Because as a kid and as a teenager, I remember I'm 29. So I remember my teens more vividly than any other part of my life because it was so emotionally charged. And I remember having a lot of anxiety and fear and anger and whatever, and everything was so intense. And it took me a while to learn that, emotional intelligence, acknowledging your emotions, dealing with your emotions, dealing with the things that are stressing you out and causing this anxiety, fear, etc., is how you live to be a healthier person, physically and mentally. And it's something that I wish I'd seen in books growing up. So I created a magic system that sort of tried to reflect this idea of emotional intelligence. I do yoga, not faithfully, but enough. And I've learned a lot through yoga about energy and the way it moves through your body and how things like blocked chakras can literally make you sick. And so I wanted to create, a magic system that took these ideas I've learned from practicing yoga, but also that I've learned from just personal growth, and then making it kind of tangible with this magic that in order for it to truly work well, you have to be emotionally sound and intelligent. And when you're not, when it's blocked, it causes you to literally, it can make you physically sick, or it can destroy you. So yeah.
I think it is so interesting how the stuff that we believe comes out in our work when you're dealing with, like magic and you're dealing with world stuff. I think such a big part of it is what feels true. And it's really so interesting to hear you talk about it and sort of, think of the way that you're writing about magic, but you're also writing about something that feels real. And so the rules you create are constrained by your sense of what's real.
Yeah,
And
which
I think
it's funny for fantasy. Yeah.
I think it feels more true to the reader because they feel that groundedness behind it.
Yeah, you end up putting personal things into your books without meaning to, it turns out.
So second books can be tough. You work on a first novel for years and years and years, and then boom, the second book is due only a year after the first, if that. And so what was it like to move into a world of deadlines and audience expectations? I mean, Beast of Ruin is amazing, so clearly you worked it out, but I'm curious about that kind of shift.
I feel like most of the words I would use to describe that shift are not child friendly. I mean, it's really hard. Not gonna lie. I think that entertainment industries, film, music, writing, like we tend to glamorize and we tend to not be really honest about what it's like. And I try to push against that by being very honest. It is really hard. It is hard to take what used to be your passion and escape and turn it into your profession, and to suddenly have new voices encroaching upon your process. Because for me, writing is extremely personal. So having all these new voices in my process was a little bit jarring, but I've learned a lot from it. And the fact that I was able to do it was really, I was very proud of myself at the end of it. It was easier to write Beasts of Ruin in a way because I had this world and knew the characters and had that groundwork laid down, but harder because I wrote Beasts of Prey in 5 years, and Beasts of Ruin was written in like a little under 10 months. So yeah.
And now you're doing it again, huh?
Yeah, and then book 3 is in theory due this fall. Whether that will happen remains to be seen, but in theory it's due this fall. And that's, people don't realize that. You know it, but readers, as a kid, I didn't realize how publishing works and how you have to have books finished basically a year before they go to print because of all the editorial and design treatments that have to happen to it before it can be printed. So
right, and especially now. So yeah.
Yes, supply chain.
And I think relatedly to this, like, you have become now, an author.
An author.
Right? You've been on Good Morning America. You have a movie deal, and I'm curious, like, what is the most fun part of that journey and what's the most like strange or surprising?
The most fun part is, before we started, we were talking about this. I'm not a morning person, and I used to have to get up, and I mean, in the pandemic age, it was terrible because I had to be up, bushy-eyed, bright at like 8 a.m. and I hated it. My mind, there are certain parts of the day where my mind, no matter how much sleep I get, whatever, like I'm not awake. I'm not really present and there. And having to slog through that was really tough. I hated it. And so it's cool now to make my own schedule, to be able to take a day off when I know I need it, and to have that freedom and to know that I can pay my bills doing something that I love to do. That's amazing. And I go to sleep every night kind of in wonder that that's my life now and my job. So that's the fun part. The strange part is being, what I try to talk about too is what I realized after Beasts of Prey came out is that I have two jobs, as a public figure and as a writer. So as a writer, I just tell stories. That's my job. As an author, I'm a public figure and I'm engaging with readers and I am doing all these other things, making content, doing whatever. And I'm introverted. I'm deeply introverted. And so it is actually pretty taxing. And one thing that's kind of happened more recently is this very, very strange dehumanization that sort of happens where people don't remember that you are a human being, especially on the internet. You're just kind of this entity that writes books and like, and people talk to you in a way that they wouldn't talk to you in real life. So that's a little bit strange. So I'm still me, still a person, but strangers don't see that. So I'm learning how to adjust. And if you have tips for that, because you have been at this way longer than I have and know way more, I'm all ears.
I mean, I remember so vividly, even though like I've been doing this for a long time, I remember so vividly that feeling of wanting to be a writer, a published writer, it felt like there was a chasm between where I was and where that was. And when I stepped across it, the most disorienting thing was that nothing had changed. Like I didn't, acquire any particular means of dealing with it, but I was on the other side of it. And I think it was really weird to think of myself now as a different person and trying to figure out how to be you know, the person who then goes out and talks about my books. And, you know, I watched your YouTube video on how to plot a novel, which um, and I thought in it, you know, specifically you talked about finding your people. And I think that's so important. Like the people that you meet in publishing, you know, your fellow writers, like they're the people who are going to be there for you throughout the process, who you can like, they're your colleagues and you can call them up and be like, hey, something weird's happening, or you know, or how do I do this? Did you ever have to do this? And I think that is like the key.
I'm trying. But I would not have gotten here. I would not be here without the community of friends who have held me up when I've been too tired to stand on my own.
And you come up together, like you were talking about your friend in this this video that I have now watched, and I'm sorry people are watching because I'm talking about it like you've watched it, but you should go watch it. And you talked about your friend and you querying together.
Oh,
and
Lauren.
It made me remember like how you come up together and like you come into this together, and it's so, you know, amazing years later to have all that history.
Yeah, and I got to see her a few days ago, Lauren Blackwood, and so, yeah, that part is really fun.
But what I was gonna ask you about was you plotting novels. I was really enjoyed listening to you talking about finding your people, and also about zero drafts. My process is mostly writing drafts, then ripping them to tiny pieces while crying. So I thought your process seemed better. And so I saw you talk a little bit about outlining. How do you outline? Do you plan physically or digitally? Like, are there ways that you handle multiple characters? What are your methods?
Ooh. So it took me a long time to realize that 3-act structure doesn't work as well for me. I prefer 4-act, simply because it's an even number. Like my literary agent one day was talking about, you know, for writers, you think about the inciting incident. And the inciting incident is sort of the moment that kicks off the true story after we were introduced to the characters. And he said that happens at the 25% mark usually. And he said 25. And I was like, oh, so like that, I was like, quarters, that makes a lot more sense. And I know, so now I know when I start a book, like YA fantasy is pretty easy. I start with 100,000. It's never actually 100,000, but it's an easy number. And I'm like, okay, 25%, 25,000 words. I've got 25,000 words to get to the inciting incident. And I know that if I'm over that or under that, and I give myself a little wiggle room, but like, that's my goal. Get to 25,000 words and hit my inciting incident. I know when I get to 50,000 words, give or take, I should be at the middle of my story. When I get to 75%, I should be kind of getting into the final conflict, maybe the darkest hour, if you use Save the Cat beat sheets. And then obviously at 100,000-ish, I should be done. Beasts of Prey is 130,000, and I don't remember how long Beasts of Ruin is anymore because it's changed so much. But I use that to kind of keep me on track. Even I'm not a numbers person, but in that one situation I am. And I start with a pretty classic outline. I do Kofi and Ekon's POV, their outlines separately, then weave them together. But when I get really, really stuck, what I actually do is get a sheet of paper and I write it, which I hate because my hand makes my hand hurt, but I can't write as fast as I type. So writing slower makes my brain work slower. And then sometimes just forcing myself to work slower helps me figure out plot knots. So, I mean, every book has looked different. I feel like a fraud when people ask me about my process because I have things that have worked for one book and then things that if I try that again for another book, it just completely does not work at all. So
I think you're so right about the 4 acts making more sense. I went back and edited my very first novel, and I was reading it and I thought, this is structured strangely. And I realized that I had believed that 3-act structure were 3 equal parts.
Oh, yeah.
So I read the book and was like, why is it like this? Why
I look at my books and say, like, why are you like this? No, but I mean, yeah, seriously, math is not, my teachers will attest, math is not my strong suit, but for whatever reason, thinking about it in 1, 2, 3, 4 even quarters was, and thinking about my middle in two parts instead of one big long chunk was just, for whatever reason, visually a lot, like really helpful. So I'm a big fan of the 4-act.
So of your characters, who's the most fun to write?
Ooh. Not Ekon. Oh my, I think like there, I mean, I don't know if I count them as characters. I like writing the monsters. I like the monsters. I like the beasties. They're just really fun to describe, and they're really fun to like. I love making them come alive. In Beasts of Prey and Beasts of Ruin, you have Kofi's POVs, and then there's a third mystery POV that changes. So in Beasts of Prey, it's Adia. In Beasts of Ruin, it's Binti. And I write those in first person present, which is just, for whatever reason, that's my mind sort of shifts when I'm writing in that tense. It feels very immediate and I'm very in it. So I like writing those, like that mystery third POV. Those are really fun.
So if you could have one creature from your world as a pet and it wouldn't burn down anything or hypnotize you, whatever, is there a beast that you would want to keep?
In Beasts of Ruin, we meet these creatures called Kongamatos, and they're the equivalent of African dragons. They're not dragons in necessarily the traditional way we think of them, because dragons come from Chinese folklore. But they're these African sort of dragons with beaks, and they're ferocious, and their name translates to like destroyer of boats, and they were destroyers of worlds and devastating, but they could fly and they're pretty, and it would be lovely to have one and be able to not
the world.
And if I could just like never ever go through a TSA pre-check line again and just be able to travel without that, I would be very down.
Well, that seems really good. So okay, in your bio you talk about a pet rhino, and I have given to understand that this rhino's name is Apollo.
Yes.
I have a question. Did you sponsor this creature? Is this like one of those things where like, you sponsor a creature and it writes to you and you're like, is this really writing to me?
Yeah, well, yes and no. Apollo does not write to me. Like everything's a story with me. I'm gonna make it short. During the pandemic, when I was super like deep in despair like everybody else, I wanted to do something good. I'd been following this organization for a long time that fosters and takes care of usually orphaned elephants. Elephants are my favorite animal. So I went to their website after following them for years to go adopt one of their orphans and try to support a conservation organization. And I saw Apollo, who was decidedly not an elephant. And I read his story, and the writer they hired to like write these orphan stories is like should be paid a lot because they're so good. They're really, really interesting. Each orphan has, a unique way that they were found and rescued, and they do have little personalities. Their keepers like know them and know how they are, know their routines. But anyway, his birthday is the same day as mine, March 13th. And I, in my weepy, like super emotional Pisces mind in the midst of despair in the pandemic, I was like, he's perfect. We're meant to be. And so I called my spouse and was like, we've adopted a rhino. And he's like, we've what? In his like Australian accent, what? And then, yeah, so now like he does not write letters, but I get, like little updates about him, and he does have a real personality. I mean, he used to build a pillow fort for himself every night, which was like he would take his nose and sort of like nose together a little fort and put himself in it, which is really cute because he was getting bigger and the fort was not getting bigger. So it just got to a point where he was just sort of resting on his head. And he plays hooky. Like he'll sometimes just like leave the conservation and they're like, cool, we don't know where Apollo is. He's just decided to skip class. Like he's just gone. There are no other rhinos. And so he tries to befriend all of the other orphans, and they're like, who are you? And he's like, friend. And it's just so freaking cute, Holly. Like I can't. So that's how I've adopted Apollo. And then I have like an actual puppy dog who is here, who is behaving suspiciously well, named Dolly. And she actually does live here in Arkansas with me.
And what kind of puppy?
She's a mini goldendoodle who is decidedly not golden in any way. She's like a deep, deep chocolate brown color. Unlike, and her siblings are all blonde, golden, and she was picked last. And I was like, it's not racist, but it feels racist, so I'm picking her because she's really pretty chocolatey color. It's like 21 pounds of terror.
Well, if she decides to behave badly and come over here and we get to see her, wouldn't be the worst.
She'll like just pop up, like she's known for doing it. There are whole interviews where you can hear her and see her just like popping in. So she's sleeping right now.
So before I go to audience questions, lastly, can you tell us anything about the third book or anything else you're working on?
Ooh.
What's next?
Yeah, so Beasts of Ruin is being written, and I'm scared to say anything because even though I've plotted it, I roughly know how it ends. I plot and I leave. I plot about 85% of my book before I write it, and then I leave 15%. And sometimes that 15% slightly changes things, and sometimes that 15% causes me to have to rewrite the entire book. More monsters. The monsters that I couldn't fit into Beasts of Ruin are in Beasts of insert title that I've not come up with yet. I think things culminate much the way they should in a trilogy. All the consequences, all of the decisions, good and bad, that Kofi and Akon have made come to a head. I think at one point I asked my editor and I were like, we can call this Beasts of like emotional turmoil and stress because the book is just a lot of stress, I feel like a lot of sexual tension. So yeah, all the things. And I've always got my ideas folder. I don't know if you were like this, where you keep your ideas kind of in a safe space, and then when you are free to write, you can kind of pull from that. So I'll do that whenever I finish.
That's a great idea. That's a great idea.
How do you remember all of your ideas? Like, if you get a good idea, do you just like,
And then I write it down in a book, and then I lose the book.
Just a normal book? Like you just write it into a book?
Yeah, like a book.
Oh, like, okay. I thought you literally, okay. I was like,
no, like a notebook, which
that's
I could
really,
but
that's a really pretty one. Whoa. Okay, that's still, it's very digital. So I have like, and I'll come up with like ridiculous names that don't make sense to anybody else. And yeah, so I've got those for whenever I finish this trilogy, and then it's time to write something new.
Excellent. All right, I got some questions for you from the question box. Everybody, we need more questions in the question box.
Yes, please.
When you were a kid, did you imagine you would be a fantasy writer? What books did you love then?
Oh, I wanted to be like all kinds of things as a kid, so I don't think I really like believed I would be one. I just was like, that'd be cool. But so would being a zoologist or an archaeologist or a wedding planner. I read, C.S. Lewis. I remember C.S. Lewis being a really big part of my childhood. I didn't think about it till literally a few days ago, Holly, but Charlotte's Web is fantasy. And like, someone asked me and I was like, oh, it was one of those like, my grandmother is a retired librarian, and Charlotte's Web was the first chapter book that I ever remember reading. And she gave it to me, and I read the first book that I remember reading by myself. And I was so proud of all 24 chapters. I think it's 24, and I've got it on my shelf. But that idea of what if animals could talk? What if a spider could like make these really amazing webs? Like, yeah, those what if books. What if there was a secret world in the back of the wardrobe? For better or for worse, I read Harry Potter, and it was a part of my childhood. Creator aside, I read those books when I had no friends. Those books were my friends. I read Aragon. I grew up during the YA boom, so I grew up when the Harry Potter books were finishing, but also the Maze Runner and the Hunger Games, lots of sci-fi, Twilight. I consider myself really lucky to have grown up with so many, when children's literature was actually like praised and not, it still gets its own, people kind of look down on it sometimes, but at a time when people were beginning to really contribute and see the fun that could be, that stories that could be told in kidlit. So I read everything.
And that was a time too. I don't know if this is true where you were, but where for the first time we had midnight release parties.
Yes.
When I was a kid, you didn't even know when a book came out. Like, you went to the store and eventually it came.
Like, somewhere on Facebook, in the deep tomes of Facebook, like, I have a shirt, my best friends at the time and we ironed on Team Jacob and Team Edward shirts. And we went at 11, from like 10 to 11 to our local barns. And it was so wholesome to like be around book people, and we're in costume and we're playing trivia games, and we're all united because we love books. And the seventh Harry Potter book came out, and I mean, we like, my very sweet father like took us, and I remember feeling it was like, we'd be like, okay, see you later, and we'd all go home and read our books till like 8 a.m. or whatever. Like, I really miss that time, because I don't know that we do the midnight parties anymore, but I loved that as a teenager. I didn't want to go to concerts. I wanted to go to like book releases,
Yeah, I mean, I remember I went to one of the Harry Potter releases in New York. I went to Books and Wonder, and Owl bit a kid. It was great.
And wait, what? What happened?
They had owls.
Oh,
and so kids were getting too close to the owls, and yeah, it was the whole thing. It was amazing.
Do not pet the owl.
Get agitated.
Yeah, fair enough. That's amazing. We didn't have owls. What?
I know.
Bring back midnight book releases. That's my campaign now.
Well, for book 3, you can have a midnight book release.
I mean, I'm down.
So if you could spend a day separately or together with coffee and econ, what would you do with them? Would you head to a library, a kickboxing class?
I bet you, like, so Kofi and I, like, this is the different parts of my personality. Kofi and I would like go travel somewhere. I bet we'd go see some natural landscape like Yellowstone or something, because she's not going to sit still. Like, she wants to be doing things. So we could go do that. And then to like recharge from that outing, I would go to like a library or bookstore with Ekon, because he's really bookish and appreciates quiet, and he's happy to just sit next to me and just read and not talk. And I'm like, so those are like the two different pieces of me. A little bit of outdoors exploring, but then I need to go home and recharge and drink ginger ale and not speak for a whole day.
What is your favorite piece of advice to give to aspiring authors?
Besides, like I said it before, but understanding that your job as a writer is different from being an author, and understanding the two pieces that go with it. I think like the unattractive things like figuring out health insurance and figuring out how, if you want to do this full time, how to make a living off of it. And I mean, doing as much research about that piece of it I think that's just as important as learning the craft of writing if you want to make it your job. The big advice is let yourself write badly. I remember very distinctly holding An Ember in the Ashes, which is one of my favorite YA fantasies, and being like, wow, I hate myself. I will never write like this. And comparing that to my first drafts and feeling terrible, and not realizing that Saba, by the time that book was printed, she took years to write it, but also it had gone through so many passes by the time I was holding it. And so with writing, or with any talent or thing that you're pursuing, let yourself do the thing badly first. And then you can always get better, but you've got to start somewhere. So, yeah. And read.
That's so hard. It's hard to let yourself. I find so if you were to choose between drafting and revision, like, where is the fun for you?
Oh, revision. I hate drafting. I hate drafting. Oh my God.
I hate it so much. And I thought, as you were talking about it, I was like, you hate drafting. I can sense it.
It's emanating off of me, because the blank page, like, I can't use it's like pulling teeth. But once I have something, then I can like mess with it, tweak it. I've got something to work with. It's like breaking a law. And it's just not a law of physics. Like, creating from nothing is actually like you're breaking a law. You're breaking a law. So it's actually very hard. But once you have it, you're like that too.
Absolutely.
You're a reviser. Yeah.
Absolutely. But I always think like if I could love it, if I could love drafting, like if I could just get out of my head. I so there was this time I was swimming in a pond near my friend's house, and it's cold. I'm in New England. You get in the pond, eventually your body goes numb. You don't mind the cold.
Yeah.
And so I'm swimming with my friends, and I was watching my husband who was getting in, getting cold, and getting out. And I had a horrible realization that that's how I write.
Oh, yeah, that's actually a good analogy because you never get used to it. But I actually read an article maybe a few weeks ago about you, and you really like blew me away with how you co-write. And there was you had co-written the article too with Cassandra Clare where you just passed the lab, and I was like, that sounds so cool, and I could never do that. Like, is that how you draft?
No, I mean, I've never written anything like that except with Cassie. Because I felt like I could just draft and hand it over, and I didn't have to think about it in the same way. Whereas, when it's me, I just sit there anxiously, like, not sure what I'm doing. Cassie made us stick to an outline. It was a whole thing.
Okay. So your process has to change when you're co-write. That makes sense. That's probably to be expected. But I was reading it, and then you were like, "Can you guess which of us wrote which piece?" And I was like, "Wait, they co-wrote this? What?" I was so blown away by that, and like inspired, and also like, "Wow, I will never be able." That's so cool.
Writing is different. It's fun. I think that it is fun in a different way.
So, sorry, not to again derailing, but like when you revise, are you able to get in the text and like revise in the text? Because I can't do that actually.
Really? How do you do it?
I start all over.
No.
I start all over it's bad. That's why I'm really slow, because if my editor says we don't get enough emotion in this chapter, I can't go into the paragraph and say Egon cried. Like I have to start from the top, and as I rewrite it with the old version next to me on Scrivener, as I'm rewriting it, I'm putting the corrections into it. It is horrific. I hate that that's for whatever reason, mentally, I can't just go into what's already there. It blocks me. It stops me. It does produce really good work. Like, I think it causes me to like really make sure the changes are truly woven in, but it makes me super slow.
I have heard of people who write books. I think Cynthia Leader-Smith does this, writes a book, throws it out, then writes the same book.
Without the original for reference?
Yep.
Oh, no. No, I can't do that. But you know what? I get why.
Somebody in the comments knows people who have done that.
I mean, you've told yourself the story, so you do know what happens, and now you're doing it again, but it's like once more with feeling. So I get it. I never get rid of my drafts. I have old like OG Beasts of Prey drafts, and if I'm like, oh, what was that line? What was that thing? I can go back and grab it. But I could never just get rid of a whole book. Like I just told you how much I hate drafting.
Yeah, I know. I mean,
oh my gosh, how I love, like, it's so cool how many different ways there are to tell a story. That's why when people are like, "What's your process?" I'm like, I don't really know. I'm trying.
So, okay, question. What is your favorite bit of lore or folklore that you have included in the novels thus far?
Ooh. I mean, anytime I get to have any of the monsters, if it's not painfully obvious, I love monsters. There's a monster in Beasts of Prey called a Grootslang. It's from South African lore. It's a snake with the head of an elephant. And I'm just like, that's terrifying. I love it. I love the story of the original. If you ever look up the original story of the Eloko, which are kind of like I hate saying, like, they're kind of like African trolls. But I subverted that because in the original story, like, the man goes hunting and tells his wife to stay inside and don't let any Bailoko in. And then of course she does, because she's a foolish woman, and then the Eloko eats her. So in Beasts of Prey, I flipped it to where Ekon is the damsel in distress in that version. I didn't know Holly, like, about any of this growing up. I knew about Pegasus. I knew about traditional fairies, although after reading The Cruel Prince now I know there are a ton of different kinds of fairies. And so it was cool to see all these creatures totally made up from a different part of the world, and they have their own stories attached to them. And yumbos, which are kind of similar to fairies. They're Senegalese folklore. Yeah, I really enjoy putting them in Beasts of Prey, and there's some creatures in Beasts of Ruin. Like I feel like the creatures in Beasts of Ruin are not as pleasant, not as nice. They're a little bit crueler. So I love to write them.
Would you ever do a bestiary?
I would love to. Like, I don't know how.
Have that bestiary.
I thought, I'm like, how does one create a bestiary? Do I write about them and then find someone to, I don't know, but like, I would love to.
Be so good. Okay, this is for both of us, and it is, do I have a favorite writing snack? Do you have a favorite writing snack or beverage?
Ooh, do you?
Coffee.
Coffee? Wait, how do you drink your coffee?
With milk.
So just nothing, you don't do any special treat, just milk.
Just milk.
Okay. Do you make it?
A lot of it.
Drink,
But I drink a lot of it.
Do you have like a favorite place to get it, or do you like it making it at home?
I mean, there are lovely places in town. I live close, I can walk to my town. But I haven't gone anywhere in so long. I've even I bought like a espresso machine so I could make more kinds of coffee at home.
So my spouse is Australian and like has very high standards for coffee, and so he doesn't like any coffee around here. So fun fact, I've never had a coffee before. Like ever.
What?
I don't know. Like when I was a kid, I was like, this is not hot chocolate. I don't like it. Yeah, I just never got around to it. I love tea. I'm a big tea person, but I've just never had coffee. And like now I'm like, well, it's too late. I love ginger ale. I said that earlier. I could drink ginger ale all day long. And I'm not a huge snacker unless you put like layered dip is my, like, if that's near me, I will just eat it until there is, like, I could keep having it. What's the is there a story of someone who eats, never mind, sorry, I'm like, is there a myth about someone who eats until they, never mind, ignore me. My mind was sort of wandering. Yeah.
Any layered dip or specific layered dip?
Layered dip from Kroger. Shout out to Kroger. No, like, refried beans and guac and sour cream and then cheese on top. I can just like, you know how you can eat certain things and like just never stop. Yeah, layered dip is a fave, but I don't eat it when I'm writing. When I'm truly writing, I've gone days without eating, which I'm not proud to say, but it's true, because I just don't think about it. I just don't. And then 3 days later, I'm like, why do I feel so bad? Oh, it's Wednesday. You've not eaten since Monday. That's why. Like,
so is that like getting into the flow state in a way where you're just so present in it?
Yeah. I put these on and I put rain, like the sound of loud rain. And that's like, I'm in the world. Like I have been so in it sometimes, like when I was on deadline for Ruin, that I picked up my phone and texted and wrote Kofi instead of mom. And was like, yeah, it's bad. Like, obviously it's not good to not eat, but at the same time, I feel like that's when I do my best writing, is when I'm totally in it. And that's why it's hard to be on social media while I'm trying to write, because it's such a different part of my brain.
It really is. It really is.
Yeah.
Okay. This is for both of us. Do you have a favorite thing to do to unwind or relax?
Yeah, lots of stuff. I like watching like Real Housewives.
I do too.
Wait, favorite one?
God, I don't know. I don't know.
No pressure.
I'm from New Jersey. I have a special place in my heart for Jersey.
Yeah.
But Dubai is very interesting.
Which one?
Dubai.
Oh, I've not watched Dubai.
What?
Ooh. There's so many. Okay, Jersey is my favorite too, actually. Teresa, I actually love Teresa. For better or for worse, I actually love her. I like Atlanta. I'm from Atlanta, and
That's good.
Atlanta's funny because like my mom and sister go to the lady who like does all their hair, and they've been going to her for years, but now she does all of their hair. And like you can go to Atlanta Airport and like probably see one of them every time. So I like watching reality TV just because it's so different, and also Formula One racing. I don't shut up about Formula One racing. These are
it's non-narrative. That's why I love it, right? It's non-narrative. I don't have to, whenever I'm watching something with a narrative, I'm working in a weird way. Like I'm processing the way the story is moving.
Yeah. And there is a Netflix show about Formula One where they do that. And I'm like, oh, I can see the motive and the conflict here. And like, I'm like, stop. But it's a sport, you know, it's a race, it's competition. And that's so removed from fantasy brain. So I like watching stuff, but I also like, because I have puppy, going on big walks. I live right by the Mississippi/Arkansas River. It's right there. Getting outside, unplugging, and just like looking around and looking at nature and appreciating the world, as cheesy as that might sound. I really like doing that. And then reading, of course. Like, although, is reading hard? Has reading gotten harder for you, or are you able to sort of switch?
It's hard to find time to read because there's so much work reading that you wind up having to do. And there's a lot of critique reading that I do for friends. And so I think that's the thing that's hard. But whenever I fly, I don't do anything but read on planes. Like that's my gift to myself. That, you know, wherever I'm going, I'm just going to let myself read whatever I want, you know, while I'm on that plane.
I have a question. Sorry, while I just be a total fangirl. What's the what are you reading, or was the last thing you read that you like really had fun reading?
So, I mean, the last thing that I had fun reading was this book right here.
Just set myself right up.
The book I want to read, which I have not found time to read, is When Women Were Dragons.
Oh, I've seen the title. Oh, that looks so good.
And I haven't found time to read it. And I'm not going to find time soon because I have a critique to do on Monday for a friend. So,
do you do audiobooks?
No, but maybe I should.
That's helped me a lot because like when I go on walks and stuff and where I'm cleaning the house or doing like non-authory stuff, I can still absorb and listen to stories. I used to be so anti it, but I've like the pandemic really got me into audiobooks. So that's how I do a lot of my leisure reading now is just by listening. So yeah.
So are there any monsters you would love to work into a story in the future?
Ooh, from any lore. My favorite outside of like African mythology, I love the Minotaur. It's both terrifying and also like one of my faves.
Good.
So maybe the Minotaur. I'm gonna leave. Yeah, Minotaur.
Okay, so here is our final question.
Okay.
If someone wanted to get to know you better, what book would you recommend they read?
Sorcery of Thorns by Margaret Rogerson is like one of my favorite books of all time. Her love of books is like so, and I think she even like in dedication said to the girls who found themselves in books, I think something like that. Or yeah, and books are like were my first friend, my first love. Like they are, yeah. I can't explain my love for books. So yeah. And my humor. Also, that book has like exactly my humor and exactly my favorite kind of type of male lead. So, yeah.
All right. Well, this has been so much fun. I cannot believe that you share a lot with the Real Housewives. My great shame.
I love it.
And so interesting to hear about your process. Did you get to talk to you this week? It was so exciting. It was so fun to hear about your process and so exciting to talk to you this week, your release week.
Thank you so much. And this was like a little unscripted. I apologize, but you guys, Holly is one of my favorite authors. I look up to her so much, and I so appreciate that she is. It's like an hour later where she is. It's very late at night, and I appreciate her for staying up with me. And so I would love to buy someone who's come tonight a copy of her latest book, Book of Night, which is fabulous. So what I'm going to do, Holly, if you don't mind, if you give me a word, the first person
Okay.
to message me on, say, Instagram with the word she
Okay.
says, I will buy you a book.
All right. Capricious.
Okay. The word's capricious. So message me on Instagram. I will go check my DMs. I don't normally, but I will. And I will buy and let me know where you want it shipped. And I will buy a copy from Mysterious Galaxy to send to you as a way to say thank you, Holly, because from my heart,
Aw,
it's so
thank you
kind of
so
you to do this.
It was so much fun.
It's so nice of you, Ayana. Thank you so much for doing that. And thank you everyone for being here tonight. If you haven't yet got your copy of Beast of Ruin, now's the time to do it. Oop, shiny cover. There we go. especially since we have still some signed copies. Treat yourself. And
Treat yourself.
on this on the same link to our website, you can also see all of Holly's books on there too, and you can treat yourself with more books. With that, thank you so much for being here. Thank you, Ayana, and happy release week.
Thank you both. It was so nice to meet you both, and thank you all, everybody, for coming.
Yes, and thank you so much, Holly, for doing this and for being so late. Now we'll release you onto the world to work or sleep or whatever you do in the night.
Yes. Bye.
Bye, everyone.